When a reception center is opened or activated, documentation unit workers have a big responsibility. They make sure emergency social services responders get the forms they need and collect, distribute, and file completed forms. Their work also helps families get back together, helps suppliers get paid, and helps colleagues gather statistics. Keep in mind that ESS documents contain personal information of evacuees and must be kept safe, secure, and confidential. In BC, a checklist for all of the position's duties can be found in the reception center operational guidelines. Reality is, there is a lot of paperwork needed to keep things running smoothly. This video is going to show you how to keep organized and how to avoid a paper disaster. This is ESS Documentation Unit explained before a disaster. Disasters happen without notice, so it's best to be prepared. Meet Maria. When a reception center is activated in her area, she is responsible for the paperwork. Before a disaster response, she needs to work with her ESS team to plan. What forms and equipment do they need? Where should her workstation be? How should the workstation be set up? What does she do with the paperwork? Answering these questions will help her stay organized and keep track of the paperwork. To start, Maria's ESS director has asked her to stock an ESS files kit that has supplies for when the documentation unit is activated. Her first step is to get a sturdy plastic box for the kit. The box needs to be big enough so that it can store all the forms that are needed for a response. A second plastic box will be needed for the search and reply forms. There are a lot of forms, and that's why it's important that the documentation unit function be activated right from the start of a response. Her ESS files kit needs to be customized for her community. There are a number of forms and some things that a basic kit should have. ESS file registration and services records, referral forms, referral form records, change of information forms, follow-up cards, out cards, current ESS rates sheets, inquiry cards, supplier consent forms, photocopies of invoice for host family for billeting forms, photocopies of registration and referral statistics record printed on legal-sized sheets, photocopies of position logs, a guide with instructions for completing and processing ESS forms, A to Z file guides, and one box of fine point black pens. If Maria is in BC, she can order the forms from the Provincial Territorial ESS office. There is also a basic kit checklist for reference in the Reception Center operational guidelines. Although Maria's team may not use all of these forms, their design is such that they can be easily shared with another community. To help her stay organized, she should also stock some file trays, boxes, labels, and sheets of carbon paper in case there is no power for photocopying. After gathering all these items, Maria needs to talk with her team about how they will be alphabetizing the files. Some communities alphabetize to the third letter while others do the whole name. After they make a decision, they should note it right on the card for reference. Next, if there isn't already a floor plan, Maria and her team should figure out where in the reception center the documentation unit should be located and let the ESS director know what area they've chosen. In order to focus on keeping things organized, the documentation unit should be set up away from the public, either at the back of the reception center or in a separate room if possible. Having a secure area for the documentation unit is important because this is where all of the blank and completed forms for the reception center are kept. It is also a central area for accessing the reports if needed by management and ensures that reports don't get lost. Even though it's important to have a plan, take note that the actual setup might be changed during the response depending on what functions are activated and what parts of the building can be made available at the time. After Maria and her team plan for the location, they need to figure out the best setup for the documentation unit workstation. A good setup will help with the flow of the paperwork and minimize confusion and traffic jams. Most of the time, there will only be enough space for 1 or 2 tables. The ideal workstation will have 4 tables. This video will talk about a 2-table setup. If there is more space available, the setup can be easily expanded to 4 tables. On the front table, lay out the blank forms that are needed by other ESS responders. Referral forms, referral record, current ESS rate sheet, photocopies of the host family for billeting forms, ESS files, and inquiry cards. You will also need a tray or a spot for returning completed forms. The side table is your work area. Lay out a tray or leave a space for blue follow-up cards, ESS files and matching referrals to be reviewed for completeness, all the form copies that go to search and reply, which include the white and pink copies of the ESS file form, white and yellow copies of the change of information form, and all copies of the inquiry card. Pink copies of referrals, which will go to the Provincial Territorial ESS Office, ESS files ready for the information to be transferred to the statistics record, statistics record, a big calculator, master file box for filing completed ESS files, folders, 1 in each different color for various reports and forms, a position log, and a phone. Now that Maria has figured out the setup, let's take a look at what happens with the paperwork during the response. Detailed instructions on how to complete the forms and a diagram of a sample workstation setup can be found in the Reception Center Operational Guidelines. Some communities have found it helpful to keep copies of these guides at the documentation unit in one central location for easy access.